What is going on, everybody? It's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Corsair Void V2, the new version of a legendary and much older headset, the original Void. And unfortunately, I don't have the original Void, so I won't be doing any comparisons to that, but I will be comparing this to the HS80 Max because the price points aren't too far apart from each other. So I think it's important to cover, as well as, of course, comparing to competitors. The Void Wireless V2 has an MSRP of $120, at least at the time of filming this, and that's what it's selling for currently. It has Bluetooth. This is a new addition, and this puts it in line with some other headsets in this price range that are starting to include it. It's not simultaneous Bluetooth, but almost nothing I've seen close to this price range is, so that's to be expected. What it does have is 50mm drivers and a very lightweight chassis weighing only 292 grams on my scale. Before I get any further, Corsair did send this to me for review. It won't affect what I say about it, but I always want to disclose that. I also do no special kickbacks or monetization with the company. They did not pay me for this review. My opinions are my own. And as you will see, it won't affect what I say about it because I have some things I like and some things I don't. And the goal of these videos are always to help you kind of decide what to pick based off what you like and value, and the things that may not be as good, maybe that's not as big of a deal to you. So let's get into what's included in the box, which, as you can see, was really fun to open because these tabs, even though I cut the film nicely, did not want to let go. So as much as I tried to be careful, I did rip it. Now, you do get a USB A to C cable in the box, which is great, but it's a short cable. Some of the other Corsair headsets, they typically come with a longer cable, so I wish this was a little bit longer so you could at least charge while you play. However, it is a rapid charging headset, so with 65 plus hours of battery life, it's excellent, but a 15-minute charge will get you 6 hours, so you shouldn't have to be tethered to a cord much anyway. 15 minutes is not a long time to wait to get a whole night of gaming out of it. And just like basically all other Corsair headsets and products I've reviewed in the past, you get a traditional Type A transmitter. This is a big traditional looking transmitter. Nothing really Type C here except the charging port of the headset itself. Now you can charge it and use it at the same time, just obviously not with the included cable. So when you look at the bottom of the headset, you see the charging port, you see the microphone, which is flipped to mute. It is not detachable, but a lot of headsets in this price range aren't. This is a volume like toggle. It's not actually a scroll wheel. You basically just hold it up to increase volume and hold it down to decrease. This is also an assignable button on the volume wheel, so we'll talk about that on the iCUE software. On the left cup, you get two buttons. You get a power button, and if you tap that while it's on, that's how you toggle between your 2.4 gigahertz and your Bluetooth. This is an action button, which can play pause music on Windows or your mobile device if you're using it as a Bluetooth headset. And if you are connected via Bluetooth but using the 2.4 connection, tapping that button will answer a phone call if it rings while you're playing. There's no do not disturb mode, so if you are annoyed by beeps and tones coming from your phone while you play, well, just disable the Bluetooth on your phone. Otherwise, there's no way to kind of suspend those notifications on the headset itself. Now, as far as the rest of the design goes, Corsair is not reinventing the wheel here. It's basically like the original Void as far as overall shape, having a very similar pad design, and this is special to the Void lineup. Now, these pads might look large, but because of this shape, you're getting less than 40 millimeters of width up top and less than 50 millimeters of width at the bottom. And the height varies, of course, depending on the, what position of the cup I'm measuring. Depth-wise is, I think, the biggest issue for me. It's not so much the dimensions. It's only about 21 or 22 millimeters deep. For people who have ears that stick out a little bit, your ear will be touching the baffle. Now, that's not always a game breaker. Some people, they don't mind that anyway. This baffle is not padded, so just keep that in mind. All you have is a cloth screen directly over a plastic baffle underneath. So you will feel a little bit of pressure there if your ears stick out a bit. Now, I like that Corsair kind of went with a traditional headset design elsewhere. So you have a telescoping yoke. So obviously, if you have a larger head, that's going to come in handy. And then they also rotate. So this is really nice because you can basically have it conform to fit your head. Some headsets in this price range, they have a fixed yoke, meaning that the head pad itself, or the headphone pad, is not rotating in and out. And depending on your head shape, sometimes that'll put a little bit too much pressure up front or too much in the back, or you can break seal. And if you don't get a good seal, you don't get good bass performance. You also get less noise isolation. So there are drawbacks to not having this kind of adjustment. So I'm really happy that Corsair did that. You have a padded headband at the top, which is nice. It's a little bit of a scratchy material. You can kind of hear that noise. However, it's more breathable and it's more durable. It's also very easy to keep clean because lint doesn't like really stick to it. Physical headband and the padding are wider, which helps kind of distribute pressure a little bit better. Now the rotation is nice, as is the telescoping yoke, but there is one thing I want to point out here, and one of them is the tilt mechanism of the ear pads themselves, or the cups. This is great to have. Some headsets don't do this either. So this isn't like a total bad thing. I just want to point out a key design thing, because when you open the headset up, you can tell that I can't tilt them in anymore. See how they kind of kick out at the bottom? I know that looks extreme, but when I put this on my head, I want to show you something, because this is already stretched open a bit, at least comparable to the camera, maybe half an inch more narrow. And I can actually get my finger underneath the pad behind my earlobe, because it's not tilting enough to fully seal it. And if I did that, then that's leaving this one a little bit exposed. So it still fits and I get a seal, but I only barely get a seal, like it's skirting the line, which means if you have a wider head or a larger head, this issue might be exacerbated further. If you have a smaller head or your head shape is more oval, this design is great for that, because the telescoping yokes are going to give you the height. However, if your head is shorter and wider, you only have so much you can do to address that with this type of headset design. The Corsair HS80 Max does a little bit better job at maintaining a seal for wider heads, partly because the clamp force is stronger with that. This one has a light clamp force and it's extremely comfortable to wear, provided your head shape is accommodating for that. So I just want to point that out. And even the Virtuoso Max, their newer, more flagship product, that does a better job for larger heads as well. So if you're looking to stay with Corsair, I would consider those models if your head is on the larger side. This headset is still very comfortable for me to wear, because I have a smaller head and it's more oval shape. And this is under 300 grams wireless, which is awesome. That's like 2/3 of a Maxwell, less than 2/3 of an Odyssey Maxwell. Which is noticeable. There are wired headsets that weigh more than this, or wired premium headphones that weigh more than this. So it's nice that they kept the weight down. The breathable pads are great because I can game for a longer period of time. And with the lighter clamp force and lightweight overall, it just doesn't have a fatiguing comfort issue for me personally. So provided your head fits kind of what I think is more aligned for it, it should be really comfortable for very long periods of time. The headband, even though it's a simple design, doesn't need to be anything extravagant because of how lightweight this is. The Corsair HS80 Max, which has a suspension strap, and I typically like that design more, the byproduct of the HS80 Max is it has a stronger clamp force, so it squeezes your head a little bit more, and some people are more sensitive to clamp. So between the two, and your head shape, of course, if you like to have a looser feel, the the Void V2 is better suited for that. If you like a more snug feel that has a soft strap, then yeah, the HS80 Max is going to do a little bit better there. Quick call out on the lighter weight and lighter clamp force. This is excellent for people who wear glasses. So if you're looking for a $120 headset that's excellent for glasses comfort, this is probably one of the best options you can have, because the pads are very compliant and it doesn't squeeze your head that much. And it also doesn't rely on having a strong seal to create the sound profile that it has. In the $120 range, I think SteelSeries is another one to consider, or for slightly more, if you get the Turtle Beach Stealth 600 Gen 3. That's not a bad one for glasses either, but this is definitely class leading, and I think this is more comfortable for glasses than even the Corsair HS80 Max. So it's time to talk about something we all do. We go to the bathroom sometimes, and that's why I called the wireless range test the toilet test, because I think that's the most common application out there for people wearing headsets, or at least they go to the kitchen and get themselves a snack. The range of this guy is absurd. I got well over 65 feet. It's frankly in the class leading area, and there was no option to change the transmitter bandwidth. Some headsets you can actually, like with SteelSeries, you can choose to have more range at the sacrifice of sound quality because it changes the compression for the wireless stream. Corsair doesn't give you any option to adjust that. I think if anything, it favors compression more, but the byproduct is I get very low latency and the range is excellent, consistently getting over 65 feet without any compression or artifact issues, and then it really starts to break up once I kind of went through that threshold. That was with it connected to my PC and my PlayStation and going through a couple walls down a long hallway. So range is good for normal applications, so you shouldn't have any issues there. As far as the rest of the transmitter performance goes, again, I don't have any latency issues, and this transmitter works on PC, it works on PlayStation. I validated and played on it for a while on PlayStation 5, and it also works on Nintendo Switch in docked mode. If you have an adapter that goes USB-A to C, then you can of course plug this into handheld mode as well, and it'll still work. Bluetooth is obviously built into the headset itself, so you don't need to use the transmitter if you're just connecting this to a mobile device like a phone or tablet. So let's talk about a few things it does and does not do. One is it uses Corsair iCUE, and Corsair's iCUE has, I think with any gaming products software, there's a lot of hit and miss experiences out there. I've had all of the software work great and all of the software brands be horrible for me. I've had mixed experiences with all the brands, and iCUE is what I've used the most, not because I'm just reviewing this headset and saying that. I purchased tons of Corsair products for my personal use because of Elgato. I have the Corsair case, I have a Corsair CPU and fan controller, CPU cooler and fan controller. So I'm using iCUE a lot, and it's been pretty consistent. They seem to have fixed the issue where iCUE just vanishes and doesn't open anymore with recent updates, which was my biggest issue with it. Having said all that, that is what you're going to use to customize the headset. There's no way to change settings on the headset itself aside from toggling modes and, of course, flipping your microphone up and down to mute it. Now, when you fire up iCUE, you have the option to update your headset and dongle. Mine did not have any updates necessary to apply at the time of filming this, so moving past that, now you have the option to do some customizations. And doing these customizations does not save to the headset. If you toggle the hardware profile mode, the only thing that saves to the headset is your RGB settings, because when you turn this on, there's a nice little RGB strip on the chassis, and frankly, it lights up quite nice. Now, this is not connected, so it's not going to do anything crazy, but you can see there's some good color there, and I think the overall design of it is understated enough, and of course, you can disable it if you want a little bit longer battery life, but I didn't see that it affected me in any significant way as far as battery life goes. Now, the big kicker with iCUE is it allows you to customize a button, and that is the scroll button. So if you see that option in iCUE, that's because this scrolls up and down, and I mentioned you press it in to create an additional action. In iCUE, you can assign what this does. Now, this does not have any form of game to chat mix. So if you're looking to have dual audio streams, not really common in this price range. I think only some Turtle Beach stuff has offered it in the past, and stuff like the SteelSeries Nova 5X, for example. But because you can assign that wheel, I use SteelSeries Sonar for my audio EQ, tuning and adjusting game chat and all of that stuff. Well, with SteelSeries Sonar, you can assign shortcuts to do controls with the audio. So I created a shortcut that was just Shift =, because frankly, I don't care if I mute while I'm doing some work during the day. But I did Shift =, and assign that to Sonar to mute game chat. And then on the Corsair iCUE software, I assigned that scroll wheel to do a dual button or key press sequence of Shift and equal. So when I'm playing Call of Duty, if I'm in Gulag or in an area where they're being too loud and I'm trying to hear footsteps, I can just press in the wheel and it mutes them very quickly. So that's kind of a nice workaround to not having game to chat mix. That's always been my biggest issue. It's not so much constantly adjusting the volume. Of course, there's no game to chat mix solution for PlayStation. That's a PlayStation thing. They don't give you any option to adjust that. Only Sony first-party headsets like the Pulse and Pulse Elite headsets allow you to do that. Now, they also give you the option to adjust your microphone volume and your microphone side tone. And the side tone on this is just okay. It's not as robotic as the Virtuoso Max was when it first came out, but it's not super clear. It helps kind of break the occlusion effect. So when you wear a closed back headset like this, which blocks some outside noise, which by the way, this isn't like class leading. It's not designed to be. It's designed to be breathable. So if you have a really loud fan or a PC fan, you might still hear that in the background to an extent. It has better noise isolation than something like the Astro A50 with the suede or velour pads, but the isolation is not as strong as what you get with the Razer Black Shark or the HyperX series. Those clouds tend to have the best passive noise isolation out of the box. So with iCUE, you can adjust your microphone settings to boost the volume. There's even an advanced setting to do mic boost. So if you're soft-spoken, you can go to the headset settings itself and add an additional gain from there. Didn't really add too much distortion, so if you need the sensitivity of it, it's quite nice. And then you can install the NVIDIA Broadcast plugin, which will affect microphone performance, and that will greatly impact what people hear. However, if you do not use all that special voice processing software, unfortunately, I don't think this microphone is amazing. This is definitely middle of the pack at best, especially when you have the Corsair HS80 Max a little bit above this in terms of price, but also in performance. And then you have things like the Razer Black Shark Hyperspeed, which is about $100 right now. And that's the best sounding mic I've heard remotely close to this price range. It's not that this microphone's terrible. The tonality is actually okay. It's just severely let down by processing and compression. Some of that range benefit, keep in mind, when you have a really long wireless transmitter range and stability, the trade-off of that is bandwidth. And that is apparently sapped a little bit of juice or bandwidth from your microphone side. So it's not going to sound as clear. On the PlayStation side, it's less noticeable, but if you're on PC and you're used to higher quality sound, at least with chat, this is going to stand out as not really being, comparable to some of the higher end microphone offerings out there. Now, Corsair gives you the option to install the NVIDIA Broadcast plugin, which is a 2 GB download, and it allows you to do audio processing to improve your microphone performance. It also helps with microphone noise rejection, because without the broadcast software, the microphone noise isolation is not great. You're going to hear keyboard typing in the background. You'll hear a vacuum in the background. And there's no way to address that if you're on console, unless PlayStation's doing its own thing. So this is what it sounds like with the Corsair NVIDIA plugin enabled, with broadcast turned on. So if you want to hear a processing difference, this is what you can expect. Now, because the HS80 Max had a price cut and it sells for about $140, which is only $20 more than the Void V2, I wanted to give you that microphone test as well, just so you can hear the difference, if at all. And if you can, great. If not, then maybe that's a helpful thing too. This has always been considered a decent microphone, but Corsair kind of changed the way their transmitters behave over the past few years, favoring range and stability over raw audio performance and clarity. Because frankly, if you're having constant audio dropouts and terrible range, well, that's not going to give a good gaming experience either. So there are some trade-offs to that. I just wanted to get you a fresh listen of this mic versus that one. And just as a quick comparison, this is the Razer Black Shark Hyperspeed headset. This isn't a better headset like across the board. They have its own unique issues, but I did want to compare the microphone performance just so you can hear it. This has better noise isolation as well. There is some aggressive noise gating, so if you're typing or doing noise in the background, this filters that out more while also having a more clear and warm sounding microphone. Again, like I said, it's one of the best mics I've heard, anything close to $100. Now, Corsair's iCUE also provides you with a 10-band EQ, and it even comes with Dolby Audio license baked into it. So if you're using this on Windows, you can use Dolby Audio for not only spatial audio, but for your own audio settings. So before I show you that setting, I wanted to explain the sound quality from an objective and measured side first. I use an ear simulator. It's a Gross KB006X Pinaclone to measure the frequency response of this headset and compare it against many other headphones and gaming headsets I've covered, reviewed, measured in the past. You don't have to know how this stuff works, but if you understand how to read this chart, I do have a link in the description below so you can kind of compare it to other products that I've measured to see how this sound profile stacks up on the rig. It's not exactly how you're going to hear it, it's how my rig hears it. With that being said, if we look at the sound profile of the Void Wireless V2, there is a monumental bass shelf. Like, there's a lot of bass, but it's also all the way up to 300 Hertz. It's a very thick sounding bass, and that's not going to be for everybody because it can sound like a little bit boxy or bloated sounding. And it's not helped that it's accompanied by a huge recess in the mid-range. So once you get from like 500 Hertz to roughly 2,500 Hertz, that recess means things like vocals or other audio cues, even guitars, they don't come through as forward in the mix if you're concerned on the music side. And on the gaming side, it's not the worst because it's less noticeable, but it might not sound as detailed to you because the bass is so prevalent, followed by a recess in the mids. Now, the treble tuning is actually really nice on the Void. I don't have any like piercing sibilants or highs, so there's nothing too sharp sounding to me. It's really well tuned in that regard, and it doesn't sound too congested. It's not too dark, and it's not too bright and metallic or overly airy sounding. The soundstage on a $120 headset, it's not going to be great, so don't feel like you're getting a speaker-like experience. It's very much in line with others in this price range, but they did get the treble tuning quite right. It's really just the bass and treble that needs the most work. Now, one thing I do want to point out, though, is the difference in the left and right driver. This is called channel matching, and it's actually really good for a $120 headset from Corsair. The difference in gap that you see between these two lines represents an average difference of measurements between the left and right drivers. So I measure the left side 3 to 5 times, average it, measure the right side 3 to 5 times, average that, and these two lines represent those averages. The closer the lines are together, the better the headset will be at imaging performance. So if something is panning from left to right, like a footstep, and you're doing positional tracking, it's really important to have tight tolerances with left and right. Now, there are audiophile headphones out there that are like really, really close to the same, which is excellent. That's part of what you're paying for. But this is actually quite an improvement. So I wanted to show you the frequency response of the HS80 Max. I'm going to change the color here for those who can't see the difference between red and green. And this blue line represents the Corsair HS80. Obviously less bass, but a little bit more lift in the 1K area, and then less upper, mid, low treble when you look at like 3 to 5K. So it's a very different sounding headset. However, when you look at the channel matching of it, let me split this one up, you can see that they're a little bit wider apart in the mid-range. And as a result, technically that's going to be a little bit harder to track footsteps with. So the difference with this, you can't EQ driver matching. You can EQ your sound profile. So I wanted to show you this guy because out of the box, if I'm just straight up putting on a headset and playing first-person shooters, I'm going to prefer the Corsair HS80 Max because to me, the comfort and isolation is great, but the sound profile is better suited towards FPS because of this area here. The whole 150 to 300 hertz being so strong on the V2, it overpowers audio cues that you would be more concerned with as far as positional audio goes. Now, the advantage of the extra bass means that it's going to be a little bit more immersive for single-story gaming, but I want to stick with just the objective side first. So the Corsair HS80 is going to sound more relaxed compared to the Void, whereas the Void V2 has a much more energetic sound, more bass, a little bit more treble, but the mids are lacking as a result. So very different sound profiles. Hopefully this kind of explains why they sound different. Now we're going to get into the subjective stuff and what I hear when I'm gaming. And when it comes to the subjective stuff, I game and listen to music on these before I actually measure it. That's just to kind of provide the final analytic approach, I guess, to doing my review process and understanding what I'm hearing. So with this guy, what was most noticeable when I first started using it was that bass bloat, that 150 to 300 hertz. The issue is when you get a headset like this from, an affordable lineup from a gaming company, Corsair is not, Sennheiser or Beyerdynamic. They're not trying to be a high-end audiophile brand. It's approachable consumer tech. So when we look into the design of these, you can see it's an all-plastic cover, and there's that wonderful 50mm driver. Behind the driver is a wall. That's this plastic. Now, from what I can hear, doesn't sound like they're using much in terms of dampening or baffling to control certain resonances and backwave reflections behind the driver. You don't have to understand what this means, but my issue that was noticeable when I used this, because that bass was so prevalent, it sounded almost like an echoey bass chamber. It wasn't a very clean, well-articulated bass. It kind of became a little bit noisy in itself, and it was kind of working against itself as a result. So naturally, I wanted to do EQ, and when you do EQ, the headset gets significantly better for me. So with that being said, here's my EQ profile for it. And keep in mind with Corsair's iCUE, you don't see numbers, but if you hover over the slider for a minute, or if you press and hold on the slider to adjust the volume or adjust the equalizer setting, you will eventually see a number. So line up your EQ settings to accommodate that. However, before you get too far matching it with iCUE, I found that the Dolby Atmos version of EQing sounded cleaner. This has been a common thing with Corsair's iCUE. Anytime you EQ positive EQ, I hear a little bit of signal distortion. It doesn't sound as clean or crisp to me. So if you can, utilize the Dolby Atmos EQ. And I will say that there is no way to save the EQ profile to this headset. So if you're a PlayStation gamer, that sound profile I showed you with that stronger bass and recessed mids, you're stuck with that for PlayStation. This was a really important thing to convey in this part because if you don't like that idea and you are a PlayStation gamer, then I would consider the Corsair HS80 Max at that point, or HyperX Cloud 3 Wireless if you want a more neutral sound. So if you don't have EQ, I think the strength of the Void V2 is more in line with immersive and single-player gaming. That stronger bass, even with the resonance issue isn't really noticeable on a lot of games. It's more for music. And then on the overall tuning in general, it wasn't like overly punishing or sharp sounding, so I could play a lot of single story games, and I felt like it was wide enough and very engaging, which was nice. It was, if I'm not doing EQ and I'm playing first person shooters, well, I think it's playable, but to me, this is kind of on the lower end as far as competitiveness goes. Again, without doing any EQ. Now, if you use Corsair's FPS EQ, which they have by default, which actually does make a noticeable improvement for first-person shooters, or you do my custom EQ, that's another, to me, a pretty big improvement because I spent some time tinkering with this, then this headset becomes a lot more competitive at this price range. And this is where it gets kind of wild. So this headset goes from one of my lesser preferred sound profiles compared to many competitors in this range, and as a result, not my favorite to listen to. But once I've applied EQ, it becomes one of the better options in this price range. And that byproduct, or the reason that's causing this, is because these drivers have a higher power handling with lower distortion than a lot of headsets in the budget price range. Now, you're not going to need like a super competitive sound profile if you're playing a racing game, for example, so that's where the things like comfort and stability and breathability, all of that becomes a more important thing to consider. And this is good for that. The mid-bass, if anything, on the note of racing games, kind of adds more of that engine vibration, so that could be a nice thing. And when you have the higher upper treble, it makes the road noise and wind sound a little bit more wider. However, I think with doing some EQ just to fix the mid-range a little bit, then you can basically just enjoy everything. So the biggest thing to consider with the Void V2 is just how many insane amount of headset options you have out there. And this isn't even close to all of them. I just didn't want to load my table up. So I want to quickly touch on a few of these models to kind of explain where the V2 stacks up. So I already mentioned the HS80 Max. And if I'm just putting this on and playing, frankly, I love this, even though the pads are a little bit more stiff and the clamp force is a little bit stronger. I love the headband design. It's very comfortable for me to wear. The flip to mute mic is great. Volume control is a traditional wheel. So if I'm just playing and going, this is the one I'd rather use on PlayStation personally. If I'm playing on PC and I can start doing EQ, I actually have a couple reasons why I would like that more. And I'm going to connect those dots here in a moment because you'll understand why when it comes to all of these. So I think it really just depends on personal preferences if you like certain features and functions more from one over the other. This is more of the competitive FPS headset, in my opinion, with a slightly better mic, whereas the Void is more suited towards the immersive and casual gameplay. So two different lineups, but they can both do all of it just fine. They just approach it a little bit differently. Then you have the Cloud Core Wireless, which sells for like $70 now. And I brought this out just to kind of warn you against it, because I actually, if this didn't break, just to be blunt, this is an excellent option. It's tuned well. The microphone was fine. The battery life is fine. It's like a no-frills headset that just has everything most people are looking for if you don't want all the extra bells and whistles. But there are multiple reports of this just dying randomly on people. Mine finally did that, and I barely use it. I have a lot of different headsets out there. So I wanted to bring this just to explain that. They also have the Cloud 3 Wireless, which is to me a significant upgrade over this. That one has the next best mic to the Razer Black Shark Hyperspeed. It has no Bluetooth. The battery life is insane at over 120 hours, at least in my testing. The sound quality is great as well. It's kind of one of those headsets that doesn't really need EQ. It's basically like the Cloud 3 Wireless, the Astro A50, and like the new Gen 5s and X, and then the Maxwell. Those are the most like neutral tuned close-back headsets out there. So it's really good for music, but there's no other features to it. You just turn it on and play. So if you want to spend a little bit more for something like that, it's a good option. It's just kind of lacking in other areas and features. So then you have the Stealth 500 from Turtle Beach. Now I have the Stealth 600s and the 700s, and they're better in different areas, but I actually like the tuning of the Stealth 500 more than the 600. It's also extremely lightweight with this suspension head strap. It still has a flip to mute mic. It has 4 EQ profiles built into it. It has game to, well, at least on the Xbox version, game to chat mix. On PC, you can adjust your microphone side tone. You have your quick switch button because this has Bluetooth, even at like $80. It has leatherette pads, so it's definitely nowhere close to as breathable, but the sound tuning is actually really good out of the box for this. It requires even less EQ. The difference is it doesn't have the same kind of clarity and bass control when you're pushing it at higher volumes when you compare it to the Void. So, you know, it's good at moderate volumes for casual listening. I think Turtle Beach had a really banger of a headset. Otherwise, I would go straight for the 700 Gen 3, which is a bit more, and it's not really as fair of a comparison in this case. So this is the Stealth 600 Gen 3. Now, I like the controls of the Stealth 600 Gen 3 a lot. They feel much more premium on the 500. This is like super basic. Like, look at the dial differences. It feels noticeably better on the 600. I just didn't like the tuning as much on the 600. There's more of a recess and then really sharp treble in comparison. So you can do EQ again, and this is still very comfortable. It's not as clampy as the older stuff, and the microphone performance is actually pretty decent for this as well. The Stealth 500, the microphone's a bit soft. So, and it has the better bass control of these two, more approaching what you get with the Void. This guy, and I thought I brought the transmitter. I guess I did not. But this one doesn't have a USB transmitter. It uses that hyperspeed dongle, so there's a cable and then a little transmitter. Not as convenient. You have a sport fabric material on the inside and then a leatherette outer. Very, very comfortable headset. Some people have had mixed results with reliability, and I've definitely had mixed results with firmware, where sometimes I'd switch from Bluetooth to game and the audio would be all jacked up. I said that in my review. This is, to me, if this headset worked every single time and the software was solid every single time, it's an insane value. It sounds good with EQ. The custom flat profile without doing any EQ sounds much better than the game profile they ship out of the box. So if you just turn this on and start playing, like, yeah, this doesn't sound that great. I don't know why Razer shipped that as the default profile. So I hit the EQ button to go to the fourth mode, where it's just custom. And to me, that sounded significantly better. Then you already heard that wonderful mic. It doesn't get as loud. That's the biggest issue, if it even works. Because again, some people had some issues with it not working after a while. But it seems like they intentionally clamped how loud this thing can get. So if you want more overhead, the Void V2 gets significantly louder than pretty much all of these, actually. I don't think there's a headset, maybe the HS80 or the Nova 5s will get comparable, but this has a huge overhead and amplifier power. So where it gets a little challenging is this guy right here. This is the Nova 5X because it's Xbox edition, and the X works on all platforms. So you get the ability to connect this wirelessly to Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, and your PC. There's also game chat support on the X version, which is really cool. Of course, again, that won't work on PlayStation, but it does work on PC thanks to SteelSeries Sonar software. This has Bluetooth. The kicker with this guy is it has onboard parametric EQ, so it's not just a 10-band. You can adjust every single sound profile you want, and thanks to their mobile app and PC Sonar, there's like 100 gain presets out there, and I even release a lot of my own presets. So this is excellent to really fine-tune and control the sound. And this has been my top pick under $130 for recommendations to people. Now, what's on a feature standpoint, it's the best one here. And the microphone's different. It's actually not bad, but you know, it doesn't have the same compression issue, but it sounds a little bit thinner and I guess crispy, if you will. It just doesn't sound like super high quality, but it's pretty clear. So what's crazy about all of this, when you look at certain aspects at a high level, especially when you consider that bass bloat I was talking about, it's not as good of a headset, the Void V2. But when you do EQ, the power handling and control it has at medium to higher volumes is better than pretty much all the sub $130 headsets I've owned. And I think that's where kind of like the magic gotcha is with the V2. So I don't think it's like the best headset you can buy. I don't think it's game changing. I'm not trying to write all this clickbait stuff or anything. But if you have the ability to play with this exclusively on PC and you have the ability to do EQ, this is going to be one of your better experiences at $120 on the audio reception side. The only downside is the comfort if you have a really wide head, and the microphone, frankly, is subpar. I really wish they improved it because Corsair has blessed us with gems of some of the best mics I've ever heard on gaming headsets in the past. The Virtuoso XT was like still one of the best mics ever released on a headset. So I'm kind of bummed that certain things have kind of gone backwards in terms of mic performance, but again, the Virtuoso XT had terrible wireless range and battery life, so things have to, you know, there's a give and take there. With that being said, I really do value this price range a lot. I think this is where most people spend their money on gaming headsets. It's the highest volume by far, so I take this part really seriously. There's like stupid expensive stuff out there, but not everyone can get it. So I don't believe in one thing being the best product for everybody. So this was a little bit more in depth just because I really wanted to help. It's the best I can in this time frame explain where this one stacks up. Corsair's onto something great. I think they did a good job with the power handling and capability of the headset. I just wish it had the ability to save EQ to the headset, and I wish the microphone performance was better. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching this. I hope you found it helpful. Don't forget to like and subscribe so I can see you at the next video. Stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.